Let's have a roll call vote.
Director LaCava,
Present.
Director Dedina,
Present.
Director Baber,
Present.
Vice Chair Padilla,
Present.
Chair Mosca.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Great. Do we have any changes to the posted agenda?
Don't believe so.
All right. Are there any members of the public that would like to make comments to the board of directors on items that are within our area of expertise and on things that are not already on the agenda?
There are no written comments and there are no hands raised either at this time.
All right, let's move to the consent calendar. And we have two items in the consent calendar. One is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting from the board of directors of SDCP held on February 25th, 2021. Second item is the treasurer's report, presentation of financial results from 2021 period ending January 31st, 2021. Are there any questions or comments on this item?
Mr. Chair, I will move the consent item.
All right, we have a motion by Director Baber. Do we have a second?
Dedina, second.
Dedina, second. Do we have any public comment on this, Megan?
We do not have any public comment and there's no individuals raising their hands either.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Let's proceed to vote on this.
Director LaCava,
Yes.
Director Dedina,
Dedina, yes.
Director Baber,
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla,
Aye.
Chair Mosca.
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
All right, let's move to our first item on our regular agenda, which is item number 3, operations and administration report from Bill Carnahan, our executive director. Two recommendations here: receive and file update on various operational and administration activities. Second is to receive and file update on regulatory affairs. Bill?
Okay, we're gonna give you the whole crew today almost. We have so many things going on, and I wanted the staffers who are working specifically on these areas to give you an idea of what they're doing, let you get to know them a little bit better, and also they can provide a more comprehensive report than I can. So we're going to kind of hand off the baton as we go through the operation administration report. I guess the first item I'd like to report to you on is really an update on our ongoing meetings with the upper management of SDG&E. We had a meeting last week with Chair Mosca and Vice Chair Padilla attending. They can give you their feelings about it as well, but I thought it was a continuing effort for us to talk about ongoing issues like the billing system, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later, and also other ongoing issues such as legislation, regulation, those kinds of things. And we actually put some new items on the table to talk about. I believe that we are becoming more successful in trying to work together. I think we realize, both of us, it seems to me, that we have a place and we have to work together, and we're working hard to do that. So I expect these meetings to continue, and we can rely more and more on those. If staff gets stuck somewhere, we can kick it up higher and work it out at that level. And so I think our commitment to continuing this effort is worthwhile and will show bear some fruit later on. So I don't know, Joe, whether you and Steve have anything you want to add to that or not, but I'm optimistic about where it's going.
Yeah, no, I don't really have much more to add. I would just say I agree with your optimistic kind of viewpoint that it's the second meeting that we've had with senior folks at SDG&E, from the CEO to several senior VPs, and I think that the conversation has been good, and it has produced fruit. And I'm happy that we're sitting down at the highest levels and we're discussing the issues that we need to discuss. I mean, we're working together. They're rolling out a billing system, which is a very complex and difficult task, at the same time that we're rolling out our program. And so we need to work together to make sure that that's seamless and that there's no issues. And there's a number of other issues, from procurement. They're sometimes trying to shed some load, and we're looking to pick up some load. And so phasing of our rollout. And so these are all issues that we've been working with them on. And I think that it's been a good conversation, and I look forward to continuing to do that. Steve, do you have any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you summarized it well. I think it's clear and consistent communication is going to be very helpful here.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on. Well, since we've met, we've become operational. A big step. We had a very fine launch. A lot of people put a lot of effort into the launch. It was well covered. I think people now begin to sort of know who we are. Launch has gone pretty successfully. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx us, but we are. It's a fairly small group of customers, but it does test the billing system, and we'll test that whole process before we start to ramp up with phase 2 and phase 3. So thanks to all the folks who helped put that event on, and thanks for all of you, and in many cases your mayors also participating in that event as well. I'd like to actually just tee up for you an item related to net energy metering. We actually covered that in the meeting with SDG&E. It's an issue. We need to adopt a NEM rate, which is net energy metering. People who have systems and want to sell in surpluses into our system, and I think had worked with the board over the course of the last few months to actually talk about a NEM rate, talk about adopting a NEM rate. It's being debated at the legislature. It's being debated at the CPUC. And we're in a position as a staff where we think that we really should take a pause, sort of take a time out here, because there are lots of viewpoints regarding whether there's cross-subsidization, whether there are losses occurring, are there winners and losers in this process? And we're wanting to suggest that we start to gather information. We want to hear from all sides. We want to make the board aware and involved in listening to all those points of view. And then we would proceed, and that may take a few months. Then the board can debate the policies and adopt a NEM rate. And most likely we'll be coming back to you to do an interim NEM rate so that we can accommodate those customers that are coming over as a part of phase 1 and phase 2. But we did receive a briefing from SDG&E. The investor-owned utilities have filed their version of the changes that they think need to be changed in NEM. We were in listening mode. We'd be happy to have them come and present that to you all at a board meeting if you like. But we're just getting started in terms of how to approach this whole subject in a way that is objective and thorough and thoughtful, so that we can come to a conclusion and adopt a rate that best fits what all of our constituents want. So I just mentioned that as a rollout first, and so you'll hear about it from time to time, and we'll talk about strategies of how to get better informed. So I just wanted to mention that that's coming down the pike. Actually, at this point, we'll turn it over to Cody to talk about an update on our staffing. We have 3 folks who are going to be coming shortly online. And so, Cody, would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, we're still on the same item, whoever's scrolling through all of these slides.
Oh, yeah, I thought maybe I was out of sync here. I was
No, go back. Yeah, so I'm very excited. This is one of my favorite things to do in the building of teams, is to bring on really awesome talent and get to work with them. So we're bringing on 3 new folks in the next, I guess, week and a half or so. The first one is, his name is Lucas Uto, and he's coming over to us from Calpine. And he's working on our back end work, helping build out a rate calculator and doing rate analysis on their end. So he's going to come over to the front end side and still help us with some of that work. He's a fantastic get for us, although it does feel like we're poaching from ourselves a little bit since Calpine works for us. But he's going to be our director of data analytics and account services, and help fill in some of the data analytics gaps and rate setting, as well as oversee the account services team. The second one is Lee Friedman. He will be working on that team as an account services manager, key accounts manager, really targeting we will enroll phase 2. He's going to be one of our faces to our key accounts, that's where we retain our revenue. This is our shot when we're enrolling folks, is to put our best foot forward, provide good customer service, and really respond to our customer needs and understand where they're at now and where they want to go in the future. And so Lee's coming to us from the city of San Diego. He was our strategic energy initiatives manager, has rates and billing experience there, as well as energy policy experience, and already a connection to the business community. We're excited about him as well. And then the third one is Nelson Lomelli, who just moved to San Diego, actually. And he was, I believe, employee number 5 at Sonoma Clean Power. So anytime you can get somebody with CCA experience, it's pretty fantastic. And he's going to be a program manager here and help us build out our programs. But for the next 6 months or so, he's also going to provide key account services, because he has a ton of experience in that as well. So I'm really excited to bring on these 3 folks and have them get started. And so that's who our next group coming in. Actually, I was looking at the next item. It's going to go over to Byron for power resources.
Well, wait, let's talk about, before we go there, let's talk about underway. We have CFO. We have actually, yeah, you might talk about the upcoming ones also.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I'm skipping through here. So we have a couple open recruitments, or a few that are about to be open. So our chief financial officer is mid recruitment now. We actually just wrapped up our first round of interviews about 30 minutes ago. And then we'll be opening up a couple of positions on the energy and power services team, and a finance manager to support on the financial operations side, as well as a director of external affairs. And so we continue to chip away. I think that will bring us up to those 3 hired. It'll bring us up to 9, and that's an additional 4 coming on. Another one, actually, I just realized as I'm looking at my screen, I'd like to mention is Kimberly Isley has been a temporary employee for us, and we're also bringing her on permanently as well, since she's been fantastic, and like everybody else is serving in 4 or 5 different roles, even though she's just one person.
And before we go to Byron, let me just mention that we are also exploring office space. You know, it looks like things are attempting to get back to normal, and things are opening up, and so we have to begin to think, what are we going to do when we progress further. And so actually Kimberly and Cody have been looking at space. We're thinking about temporary space, so that we could grow with the temporary space, give us a chance to really canvas what we want to do on a permanent basis. We need to decide, for example, a work from home policy. Maybe we don't need an office for everyone. There are some new concepts floating around there as well. And so the plan really is to gather some information, some ideas, even looking at spaces, getting some prices, things like that. And then we could use this as an item for our strategic planning session, so that the board has a chance to help us in terms of what those policies might be. We don't know, when it might get triggered, but we better be prepared so that we can move fairly quickly as conditions dictate. So just to let you know, that effort is underway, but the board will be involved in determining, where, when, how, all of those decisions once we develop some ideas and options and some facts. So we just want you to know that's underway as well. Moving forward in the report, power resources, a lot's been going on with regard to power resources, and I thought would have Byron take that section and talk to you. He's been very busy, as of all the folks in that group. So I'd let him talk about what his activities have been. Byron?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I'll try to keep this short and sweet and touch on a few items here, but feel free to answer any or ask me questions. Happy to go further into detail as anyone's interested. So as mentioned, I think since we chatted last, we are now an official load serving entity. We have customers. We're buying power every day, scheduling our load and buying it and selling into the California market. So all that goes along with that has been achieved, and we're kind of up and running, so to speak, on that front. We also have a number of contracting and power and renewable energy procurement processes underway. So I think as we're all aware, we have a long-term RFO for long-term renewable energy. That process has been going on for a few months now, but it's been nice to kind of inherit a book of business, so to speak, and a number of deals to get across the line. So we do have well, I'll call it a handful of deals that have been in the works and that we are getting, one, we're excited about, and two, feel like we're getting close on. So we should be able to bring those to the board here for consideration in the next meeting or two. So there's, again, good progress being made there, and should have more to share, again, hopefully before long. We're also working, I think, as noted before, with SDG&E. I think a number of you are familiar as well with negotiations that have been going on with SDG&E to get a enabling agreement in place, and then also a renewable energy transactions there as well. So that continues as well. We also launched last week a solicitation, or maybe it was early this week, it was on Monday, for short-term renewable energy and carbon-free energy supply. So obviously we've got a lot of long-term contracts in the works, but in the meantime, we're going to need some short-term supply to fill the stopgap while those new resources are coming online and being developed. So we're out in the market for that as well. Should have more to share about that as well next meeting. We're expecting to receive offers for those short-term supplies probably in early April, first week of April, and so should have more to share then, and again more contracting at that point. I'll keep moving, but if there are any questions, please do yell out, stop me, and let me know. On the resource adequacy side, I think we've previously discussed a request for a waiver in the year ahead local RA process that was granted. So I think that was the one note we wanted to make sure was passed along here, that waiver was granted, and we still have some small open positions for this summer in resource adequacy that we are actively marketing and contracting for now. And then also we'll be shifting our focus here before long. It's March, and the year ahead filing isn't due until October, but that'll be here before we know it. So want to make sure we stay ahead of that, and we'll likely be out for more resource adequacy again here before too long. But just to note that the calendar's flipped over, the last year's year ahead process is behind us, and it's probably time to start planning and looking forward. And then finally, obviously looking at this summer is quite an expensive market to be in right now, but we have been consistent with our risk management policy. We have been layering in some financial hedges and shaped energy purchases as well for the balance of this year, as well as for the next few years. And so kind of from a risk management standpoint have been, as I said, layering those in over time over the last few months now. And so doing all that consistent with our risk management policy to ensure we're in a good place moving forward. So that's kind of the high level summary of what we've been up to. I'm happy to take any questions, but also happy to keep it moving along so we can get out of here as well.
I have one question, Byron. There was on the front page or somewhere in the paper this week, it talked about the local IOU purchasing more power ahead of the summer as a result of last summer. And we continue to talk about the spikes that from last year or from the last issue that we had and that the region had, and it seems like that price increase has never come down. Are we, or the kind of this purchasing of more power? How is that going to impact this? Is this going to kind of prolong this spike in the market?
Yeah, short answer is I think yes. It's a complex issue, and there are a lot of moving pieces. But I think primarily yes. Having seen what the market did last summer, having seen where recent events outside of California, but for example in Texas, right, with a lot of market volatility, I think there's kind of just a good amount of trepidation, I guess, in the market. So just kind of naturally, I think most folks are risk averse, and most shops are more risk averse maybe than they would be otherwise. In addition to that, as you noted, we have seen a lot of the very, obviously, as it should be, a very political issue as well, right, to make sure that we don't have a repeat of last year. So every entity, every agency is making sure that we do everything we can to have as many resources online and going about a number of methods to ensure that. So unfortunately, it's happening in such a quick timeline that it really is having an impact on market prices. So for those of us who are buying, it's making it more expensive.
And we're going to show you that in the action item on the agenda today. You'll see that pretty dramatically.
All right.
Okay, Byron, is that it?
Yep, that's all I've got, unless there are any.
Well, quickly, another big item that's always on our mind is the billing system, and how is that going to transition, and is there going to be glitches, and what's going on there? And so I've asked Cody, who's her and her team have been really the interface, meeting a lot with SDG&E and with Calpine, and so to give you some flavor for what's going on there.
Thanks, Bill. Calpine is really a huge asset to us as well. They, as you know, provide our back office support, and we put a little blurb in the operations and administration report just so you can see the work that they're doing and the progress. They've just been helping us set up all of our customer-facing infrastructure, web forms, our rate calculator, which will be on our website in another week or two, just operational materials like frequently asked questions, terms and conditions. They're really a very technical team that help us just on anything that we need support with. They're also working really closely with SDG&E on the back end to ensure that all of our customer enrollment lists are accurate and they reflect the customers that we all agreed to are transitioning, as well as kind of validating and calibrating as SDG&E is also transitioning their customer data system at the same time. So really working on a technical side to interface with them and make sure that's all working smoothly, and they're working out any kinks that may be coming up. So between Calpine and working closely with SDG&E and also on all that customer data management, it's really critical to get our bills right with our customers. So all that collectively is a lot of meetings, a lot of synchronization, and we're moving ahead pretty smoothly with all that, and I think it's working fairly well. We also put a little note in here since our launch, which was just our municipal and what we called quasi-municipal accounts. We've gotten a total of 45 customer phone calls, as well as a cluster of emails, and they've all, interestingly, even though we've only enrolled municipal accounts, they've all almost exclusively have been residential customers that have heard about it, and asking a variety of questions about enrollment, and a large portion of those were around rooftop solar. So I can imagine you all are going to be hearing about that in your own cities and your other roles as well. So we'll continue, as Bill mentioned, to keep you informed of that as well.
Okay, thank you. And
just connected to that too, I think that the solar, NEM customers seem to be very engaged, and I get a lot of questions from folks that are either NEM 1 or net energy metering program phase 1 or phase 2 or however you say that, and so I think that it's important to what Bill was saying before. I do think that this is now kind of front and center in terms of an issue for us throughout the state. And so we should be doing whatever we can to educate the board here on this issue, so that we're ready to kind of tackle it and think about the rates going forward.
And we will do that starting next meeting. We'll give you some more in-depth information. Actually, we're going to touch on it some today too in the regulatory report. There's some discussion about it in there as well. So
good.
Joe, this is Bill Baber. Can I ask Cody or Bill a question?
Yes, Director Baber.
So in our initial signing up with our municipal, quasi-municipal customers, do you have any feedback? Did we get anybody opt out? Anybody go from the basic to 100%? Any early results?
Wait.
Yeah. So I believe, I don't want to get too far ahead of our member cities, but I believe, maybe I'll just put a little peer pressure on you if you haven't, that all 5 member cities, their municipal accounts have all opted up to 100%, which is fantastic. As well as, and the city of Encinitas has opted up their entire jurisdiction to 100%. I don't know if any other customer accounts have opted up to 100%. There's quite a few that we've reached out to that are thinking about it or doing some work to see if they can and are very interested. So I imagine that over the next month or two, we'll have some opt-ups from them. As far as lessons learned, we're testing a lot of systems. We're understanding what questions we get the most so that we can refine the answers. But nothing major, nothing that went wrong, nothing that we've done just a lot of learning for us and how to do outreach. One thing we did learn is that we need a lot more staff to help on outreach because it's a high touch customer engagement effort. So that's been really interesting to learn.
Cody, you don't have to mention any names, but did any of our potential customers opt out and stay with SDG&E?
I will not mention any names, but yes, there have been a few opt-outs, and I'm happy to talk to you offline.
Okay.
Cody, one other question that I wanted to ask, and you just kind of jogged my memory by talking about customer service and communications. I think I brought this up to SDG&E around the CIS, the customer information system. And I think it's truly important that we have a strategy and that we're working with their communications folks around the deployment of CIS, and that going forward, if there's, I think it's going to be brilliant, and there's not going to be, I hope that there's not going to be any setbacks, but I think we should be prepared if there are any kind of bumps in the road, and that we have a strategy and a communications plan, and that we're working with their communications people to make sure that our customers are aware of what's going on if there are any kind of bumps, and that we're messaging appropriately.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely weave that into our conversations with both Calpine and SDG&E.
Good.
The other thing we're doing also with Calpine is once we get up, particularly as we enter into phase 2, we'll have a monthly report. So you all will be able to see numbers like customers opt out. So whatever you'd like to see, we'll put it in a monthly report. And they've got a lot of experience in reporting out to other boards and of CCA. So we're going to sit down with them and sort of see what kind of information is available, what makes sense, and then we'll just include that in your board packets every month, so you can keep track of all that in whatever detail you want. So I think we have a little bit of a transition here. We have a regulatory affairs item on the O&A report, and I think Laura is going to do that, and then of course Ty has his report. We have it as to receive and file as 2 separate items, but Mr. Chairman, if we can just go ahead and move into that, then when we finish, you can just receive and file both of them. Is that all right?
That sounds good.
Okay, so let me turn it over to Laura Fernandez, who's our new legend regulatory person. She's going to start off the report and then turn it over to Ty.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, thanks, Ty, for letting me crash your regulatory report. I thought I would just cover a couple of the items, but I appreciate you putting the slides together. If we could go to the next slide, that would be great. And then the next one. Oh, and then one more. That's our little overview of the things we're going to cover. And then this is where I'll go ahead and start. So as you might recall, last month, the CPUC ordered the investor-owned utilities to ensure that they have more power supplies for this summer, as you just mentioned, Chair Mosca. Today, the CPUC continued their authorization for additional supply side procurement, and they also addressed the demand side of the electricity equation by encouraging customers through a variety of programs. Some of these are modified programs, some of them are new programs, and all of these actions are intended to avert the potential need for rotating outages like what happened in last summer. So as the slide mentions, IOUs were ordered to procure additional resources to meet peak demand periods for summer 2021 and summer 22, and I'll talk about this a little bit more on the next slide. The slide does say that the IOUs were instructed to permanently increase the planning reserve margin. There was a slight change in the decision that was finalized today, and so the decision effectively increases the planning reserve margin to 17.5% for this summer and next summer, but it's not permanent at this point in time, and it is subject to modification in the RA proceeding. Separately, the decision requires the IOUs to make changes to their critical peak pricing programs, and they also have to hold a workshop by April 7th. And that workshop will be intended to sort of serve as a forum for discussing potential barriers and solution for non-investor-owned utility load serving entities, so CCAs, to potentially explore developing critical peak pricing programs. We've had discussions with SDG&E about this, and we're looking forward to further conversations with them, and also looking forward to the workshop. Cal CCA did note in some of their comments that it's probably unlikely that CCAs would be able to establish a critical peak pricing program for this summer, but those conversations are ongoing, and the CPUC has encouraged that at this workshop, it also be used as a forum for encouraging customers to potentially participate in other load shedding programs. And finally, on that CPP item, SDG&E has to make modifications to their program by next summer rather than this summer because of their billing system freeze. So SDG&E and PG&E both have to modify the window of this program to be 4 to 9 p.m. by next summer. And that's because that's when that peak load period time is. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. And so on this item, this is related to that planning reserve margin change. And so the numbers that you're seeing these are the targets, the minimum targets. The 2.5% is based on the average CPUC jurisdictional share of the CAISO peak load during the summer peak months. And this comes from the CEC's 2019 Integrated Energy Policy Report for and it's the forecast for year 2021. So these targets apply for this year and also next year. And then I was going to go ahead and let Ty explain the minimum target versus the recommended target, or I think that they called it a soft cap.
Thank you, Laura. The chart that you see on the slide here reflects both the minimum targets for each utility. That's the minimum that they have been ordered to procure, and then a recommended target, which is larger than that, 50% larger for each of the utilities. One of the issues here with these emergency procurement orders, and this one is no different, is that there's not a ceiling or an upper bound on the procurement. So it's an issue. CCA customers will be paying for the cost of these resources through the cost allocation mechanism. And so it is somewhat problematic, I think, from the cost standpoint, not only for CCA customers, but for bundled customers as well, if the commission hasn't instructed the utilities to procure within a specific range that has an upper bound. So that's something that
what incentive, Ty, would they have to procure more?
Well, they recover the full cost of the resource. So they have an incentive. There's a financial incentive to procure as much as possible.
All right.
Because they pass those costs along so that they don't lose money. They're guaranteed at least a return on that investment, right?
But the whole conversation up in Sacramento is to get out of procurement altogether. And when you have more and more entities moving to CCE, they have there's less and less to purchase for, and so I guess I was just logically wondering, what incentive would there be specifically in our region? I can see potentially for SCE and PG&E a very different scenario, but just specifically to our region, is there any incentive to be purchasing more? And if you believe there is there a solution to what we should be pursuing?
Just on your questions around regarding the question around incentive, I mean, there's a financial incentive for the utilities to procure the maximum that they can get approved, because those costs do get passed on to all customers, so they are financially compensated for those resources. There are a number of things that we can do. A number of issues related to procurement requirements are being addressed in the resource adequacy rulemaking presently. Cal CCA has been very active on that front, and now that we have Laura on board, I think we're going to have a stronger voice with Cal CCA working on some of these solutions. We have internally also been discussing how to approach some of these issues. And discussing things like expanding the resource types that are in the methodologies that go into developing resource adequacy requirements. Currently, wind and solar get very low ratings for resource adequacy purposes. So potentially modifying those things. That we also have discussed, revisiting some of the out-of-state import rules requirements to address these sorts of issues as well. So there's a very robust discussion going on right now among the CCA programs and at the commission about how to address this.
All right. And when that's being purchased on our behalf too, I would imagine the content is not necessarily consistent with what we want to see.
Fortunately, in this latest round of emergency procurement, there were some restrictions placed on the resource type. So no new gas plants are eligible for this round of procurement, although existing facilities, additional procurement from existing gas facilities is permitted. But I will just point out that the vast majority of resource adequacy is provided by fossil fuel generating resources. And so over the long term, that does present a conflict with the programs, goals, and the member cities' climate action plans.
Thank you.
Ty, are you going to cover the term that not all the IOUs have different terms on these purchases, and we had some problems with SDG&E's 5-year term? You want to talk about that?
We did, yeah. I'll happy to cover that, Mr. Carnahan.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'll just mention it briefly. We a previous commission order instructed utilities, as I mentioned, to do a similar round of procurement, and we protested SDG&E's implementation of that decision because while they were directed to procure resources for summer 2021 and potentially summer 2022, SDG&E proposed a 5-year contract, and that was referenced in the media story about this issue, and we protested on grounds that it was unnecessary. But unfortunately, the commission sided with SDG&E and approved the 5-year term. So that was the status there. Any other questions about these reliability orders? And I'm happy to talk to folks offline as well about this. It's I think emergency policy making is not the best way to go about setting policy around energy or any other issue for that matter. So I think one of the things that we need to grapple with in the RA program is what to do in these sorts of situations, and ordering emergency procurement has a lot of problems associated with it. May not be the best route.
Yeah, and how do we get to a conversation of not just kind of band-aiding stuff, but kind of what happened, why did it happen, and what do we need to be focused on in the future to ensure it's not happening, and not just kind of procure a bit more emergency reliability power for the summer because it may happen.
I will mention, Mr. Chair, that on that note, the RA resource adequacy rulemaking is under the whole entire program is under review, and so they are asking some difficult questions about the state of the program. Some of the proposals that have come forward have not been very good and might make things worse in terms of costs. And so we have to, balance various factors here. But at least I think there's a widespread recognition that there's a major issue with the resource adequacy program, and the difficult questions are being asked. So we will keep track of that process and conduct the best advocacy that we can through Cal CCA on this issue.
And I would just add on this emergency reliability item that, to your point of, what happened and why, why did it happen? I wanted to let you know that at the next board meeting, Byron and I are planning to provide a little bit more of an in-depth presentation regarding what happened last summer, why did the power go out, and what are we doing to prepare for this summer? So that is forthcoming.
Great job. Thank you.
All right, if there are no other questions on emergency reliability, I'd be happy to move on. If I could, next slide, please. I did want to surface a process that's going on, and it's really been a series of decisions. But SDG&E has proposed and has received authorization to eliminate the seasonal variation in its several of its rate schedules and some residential rate schedules. And I just wanted to alert you all to that. They also obtained approval to eliminate a high usage charge that had been put into place by the Public Utilities Commission as part of a residential rate decision previously. So just really want to alert the board about that. And we've obviously informed the program officers and staff about that. And this is being factored into the rate making process. So I just wanted to let everybody know about that. No action that we need to take other than making sure, that we've incorporated that into our rate comparisons and so forth. Next slide, please. We're also monitoring and actively participating in SDG&E's general rate case phase 2. And this relates to the development of SDG&E's sales forecast, which is very problematic. You will all recall in the last ERA proceeding, the sales forecast that was proposed in that proceeding did not take into account departing load and artificially skewed SDG&E's rates significantly lower than they otherwise would be. We want to make sure that we don't all have to endure a repeat of that roller coaster regulatory proceeding and the processes and steps that took place related to it. So we are closely scrutinizing and participating in this proceeding. SDG&E has committed not to use an outdated forecast to set commodity rates. And they're going to set their sales forecast in a standalone application that we will be participating in as well. So I just wanted to convey that we are paying close attention to that issue. Next slide, please. I think Laura's going to cover this one, if I'm not mistaken. Laura,
Yep.
All yours.
Great, thanks. So last week, 18 parties submitted proposals for a NEM successor tariff. Most of the parties agree that NEM 2.0 created a major cost shift to non-NEM participants. And the cost shift issue was addressed extensively in the party proposals, which were covered during 2 days of workshops at the CPUC. So there's obviously a lot of proposals, a lot of details in these proposals, and it gets into the weeds pretty quickly. But I asked Ty if I could cover this because as you've already heard from Bill and Cody and everyone else, NEM is something that we are closely paying attention to. And at the next board meeting, we are planning to provide a more in-depth overview, but we just wanted to let you know that we are closely tracking with the help of Ty and his staff, the NEM 3.0 proceeding and all of the proposals that are going on there. But in addition to what is happening in the regulatory space, there is action in the legislative arena, which Bill sort of touched on. There's a bill, AB 1139, which would establish a new standardized tariff, and it would replace NEM 1.0 and NEM 2.0. And so, we're tracking, the legislative piece, the regulatory piece, and we're kind of just in a fact gathering mode right now. We haven't made any decisions. We're just kind of in a, learn and absorb, and we're getting input from the Community Advisory Committee and other stakeholders, and we're sort of continuing through that process. But we are planning to provide a more in-depth overview because I don't think that one slide is enough on NEM since it's a really complicated issue. So that was kind of what I wanted to say for today.
Thank you, Laura, because I think just like yourself, I think that this is so interesting and so important. And there's so many things that are going on in this space. So I do agree with Bill Carnahan that taking it slow and methodically is important because there's so much going on. And this is, I don't know what the proposals are from some of those folks, 18 different parties. But I thought that nobody was really kind of talking about changing NEM 1 or NEM 2. Certainly there are a lot of customers that would be impacted and very upset. And so interested in finding out more about that. because I was going to even say to what Bill was saying, when we set rates, it's only with regard to kind of the future customers, not NEM 1 or NEM 2, because NEM 1 or NEM 2, whatever their benefits are, it's not going to change. Although I suppose the option could be for our board to go above and beyond what NEM 1 or NEM 2 offers. But I was always presuming that NEM 1 or NEM 2 is, whatever they currently have is what's going to be when we talk about it. And when we're talking about NEM rates, we're talking about folks that are regular residential customers and then kind of move into rooftop solar in the future. But I guess that may not be the case. And so it really is stay tuned.
I will just mention, Mr. Mosca, that the utility proposal, the utilities are working together. They have a joint utility proposal, which always gives me pause. But nevertheless, they are proposing to grandfather NEM 1.0 and 2.0 customers. I think there's a lot of parties who agree that existing customers shouldn't be forced to go onto a different rate, having made investments in the rooftop assets. So we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Certainly, though, that the legislation, if it were passed, would trump anything that the commission did. So that I think that proposal is, one that's being driven from the legislature with respect to the existing customers.
And
Joe,
it doesn't well, we can talk about the legislation later, but it tends to also look more, I think, at the injured parties than the NEM customers. I think it's trying to sort of do an equalization by not penalizing the existing folks and actually giving more opportunities to the folks who are being harmed. That seems to be my take on the approach, so that it's a different way of approaching it, and it's one that we really need to study because it may work for us. We don't know.
Sorry, Director Baber.
I'm going to use simple terms, Ty. I may get this wrong, but my understanding was that if you were a net energy metering, at least the SDGs, and you produced from your solar rooftop more energy that you used, it just went back into the grid and you didn't get any benefit of it. Is that true under the current system?
No.
No.
The NEM rates set compensation for sort of what they call surplus generation. So generation above and beyond what you use if you have a rooftop solar system, surplus generation is what you export back to the grid. Sometimes we call net export. So you get compensated for that as a credit to offset your other charges. And so one of the arguments that's being vetted in this proceeding is what should that compensation amount be?
And if you were to have so many credits that you offset all of your charges and you were basically net zero and you had excess, then what happens to that excess?
If you that's a good question. I think you get a credit for a subsequent credit. I think there's a true up period where these charges are offset, and I'm not sure actually what happens if the credit exceeds all your needs for the year, and you don't at the end of that process. I'm not entirely certain what happens to that amount. I can get back to you though.
Yeah. Joe, this came up in one of the conversations we had with one of our municipal utility. I don't know, maybe it's not the right scale, so forgive me, but is it possible that someone could have net energy metering and be efficient and have enough solar panels that they would be a candidate for our tariff in program because they've got the capacity to take in more and sell it to us?
Yes, we talked about the feed-in tariff program before. They could be a candidate for the feed-in tariff program.
Okay.
But the feed-in tariff just acts like a sales contract, so that they wouldn't have the optionality of raising it, lowering it, and doing all of that. It's just strictly a sale, and then there's a price for that sale, as I Well,
I only raise that to say, if there are customers who are with SDG&E under their net metering, NEM1 or NEM2, it is theoretically possible we could give them a better deal if if somehow they were also able to sell as part of the feed-in tariff program. Just an idea for you.
I will mention that most CCA programs have set a compensation structure for net exporters or surplus generators that exceeds what the utility pays by 1 cent per kilowatt hour or something of that nature. That's a very common CCA program NEM structure. So just so you know, that's what a lot of CCA programs have done and are currently doing.
And let me just interject. One of the issues that the reason we need to get more facts is the IOUs are claiming that what they pay is actually being subsidized by other non-solar customers, and therefore there's a cross subsidization taking place. Okay, which isn't fair. And if that's true, and I'm not saying it is true, and we come through the door and we say, well, we're going to give you more than the IOU. That would just be compounding the problem, making it worse. And that may not be the policy that would be good for us. And so that's why it's so confusing in terms of the claims and the counterclaims. And both sides are very emotional about their positions. And it's really a bit of quicksand there. And I think we need to really take a look at both sides or all sides of the issue, and then sort of make a value judgment based on that, because there's a lot of misinformation going around.
That would probably be good for our research, Joe. I never think there's a customer that we can't reach. So maybe I'm too optimistic sometimes.
Yeah, but that's why, Bill, we're going to have further conversations about this, and that all leads to us taking the action of what will be our NEM rates for SDCP. I mean, that's exactly what we'll be talking about.
Fair enough.
Got a couple of other items if we're ready to move on to report back about. So if you advance the slides, that would be great. Appreciate it. One of the things that we've been talking about in terms of program for SDCP is the disadvantaged communities green tariff. And there's a companion program, community solar program. And this program provides a 20% discount to customers who want to obtain renewable energy, but may not have the means to go out and buy a rooftop solar system. So in many senses, it's meant to address some of the problems that are being raised in the net energy metering proceeding around access to solar and the associated costs. So this program is a bit unusual in the sense that it is equally available to utilities or CCA programs. And so the funding from that discount, for that discount, is funded through the GHG allowance. And if those funds are exhausted, then it will be funded through the public purpose program charge. It is there is a cap on the program, and in terms of the total megawatts statewide, and the allocations of that of the power that can be eligible for this the funds to provide the subsidy or the discount it is based on disadvantaged communities as defined by the state of California's Cal Enviro screen. And so we've been discussing with SDG&E, what our allocation would be. We've been discussing with the Public Utilities Commission's Energy Division about what our allocation would be. And we are also in the process of scrutinizing with Byron's help, scrutinizing, some of the procurement restrictions or requirements to see if this is viable. So everything at this point looks favorable, and it's something that there's been a lot of interest in from outside the program, inside the program, and so we're going to continue on with these discussions. And our In terms of process, our next steps are going to be to approach the Public Utilities Commission with our proposal for an allocation, and we're planning to do so jointly with SDG&E once we are able to finalize our allocation through a process with them. And then we'll set the program up, and there'll be a procurement aspect to this program, as well as substantial outreach effort that's required under some of these to serve some of the program needs. So a really interesting program, and I think it's presently underway, and happy to answer any questions about that as well.
Ty, this is the other Joe. Can you speak a little bit about either the cap or the limited allocation and what that might look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in the process of determining what that is, but it's most likely going to be between 10 and 20 megawatts for San Diego Community Power. And that is based on the percentage of residential customers within these disadvantaged community zones within the program's territory. And so there's a calculation that goes into that allocation, and those are the key factors.
And can you translate real quickly how many residences that might translate to?
I don't have. We're not quite done with the allocation process, and so I don't have a customer count, but we should be able to report back to you next month about that, about the customer reach once we have the allocation finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other? I have one final item. If there are any other questions about the DAC GT program, then we can move on. All right, next slide, please. So, usually during these regulatory reports, I drag you all into the weeds and talk about the details best I can in the technical aspects of the regulatory proceedings. But in this instance, I want to zoom out a little bit and look big picture. Every year, the Public Utilities Commission undertakes a utility costs and affordability study. And they took a little bit of a different approach this year, looking ahead over the next 10 years, which I think is a very valuable exercise. And so I wanted to just share some of the major findings with you all. One of the major findings is that the rate base, meaning the total aggregate amount of charges is that flow to the utilities is increasing steadily, 5 to 8% annually, even though the demand for electricity is essentially flat. Some of the drivers of these increasing costs are wildfire hardening costs and transmission costs. And as far as looking into the future, transportation electrification costs is something that top the list in terms of cost drivers going forward. So these are things for us to keep in mind. These wildfire hardening, transmission costs are, those are transmission and distribution costs. A lot of the transportation electrification costs will be distribution, also charged to transmission and distribution. Presumably, we don't know exactly how those costs are going to be. All those costs are going to be recovered, but I think it's a pretty safe bet that there'll be substantial infrastructure costs, meaning that CCA customers will pay for these costs. So their bills will be going up as a result of these factors. Looking a little bit more closely at SDG&E, I think it's pretty interesting. If you'd advance the next slide, please. Looking more closely at SDG&E, they have increased rates 48% since 2013. They compared to 37% for PG&E and 6% for Southern California Edison. Since 2016, the rate base for SDG&E has been increasing on average by 7% per year, excuse me, despite, again, flat demand. And over the future, or in the future, the next 10 years or so, the commission's study estimates that SDG&E's rates will continue to rise just shy of 5% per year. So I think, you know, one of the important questions here is if demand is flat, you know, why are costs rising and expected to rise? And I think there are some interesting questions for us all to ask. This report also called out SDG&E for its rate making process and for being somewhat opaque. So I thought that was interesting to pass on as well. So that concludes my my report, and I guess Laura's report too for regulatory matters. And happy to take any final questions.
Thank you, Ty, and thank you, Laura. Some really good information. And Ty, I like going down that rabbit hole as well. So maybe some of the other board members are like, no way, but always enjoy your presentation. And as always, if there are any questions or comments for any of our speakers, any of our staff, please raise your hand, shout out, or however you want to get my attention so that you can speak. Are there any questions?
It's Bill. Will only say, Ty, when you call the rate setting somewhat opaque, that's quite the that's super polite understatement. Somewhat opaque.
I've got more to say after the board meeting, so maybe we can talk, Mr. Baber.
There you go. Thank you for being polite, Todd.
Bill, is that it for your?
Yes, we're ready for you to receive and file both reports.
All right, received and filed. If there are no other questions or comments for staff, and if there's no public input, Megan, I'm going to move on to the next item.
There's no public comments.
All right, so that's received and filed, and we're going to move on to item number 4, which is committee reports, recommendation, receive and file, update from our CAC, our Community Advisory Committee. Is there somebody here to speak on behalf of the Community Advisory Committee, or is there anything to present?
Yes, Chair Muska. I see Eddie Price here. I know he told me he was having some technical difficulties, but Eddie, can you hear us? Let's see. I know he did say that.
So Tara Hammond, who's the vice chair of the Community Advisory Committee, she has her hand up. She's as an attendee, so we may want to elevate her.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
She's probably going to say that she's speaking on behalf of the group.
Hey there, good evening, everyone. I'm happy to give a quick update. I chaired the last meeting, and I will share that the Community Advisory Committee is eager to get involved with community outreach and is excited to work closer with Civilian during the phase 2 and phase 3 rollouts. People in the community have started to ask us how their city can join San Diego Community Power. So we're hoping to discuss expansion at an upcoming meeting. So we're on the same page with all of you. We will be finalizing our work plan. We've now been doing this for a year. We took last year's work plan as the framework, and we've added more details as well as additional responsibilities and stronger equity components. And then last, but certainly last not least, we did discuss net metering at length. We unanimously agreed that San Diego Community Power being involved with protecting net metering is a top priority. We understand Laura is tracking it, and at our next meeting, we'll be voting on having you as a board take action to protect solar. Rooftop solar is truly under attack. What's being proposed at the CPUC as well as through Assembly Bill 1139 would kill rooftop solar overnight. And it's an industry that provides a $1 billion economic benefit to our region. It will impact San Diego Community Power. And what's scary is if what's being proposed passes, it would set the precedent, and utility companies in other states that don't have 100% clean energy goals would surely follow suit. So at a time when we should be moving towards 100% clean energy, we're in a climate crisis, economic crisis, we should be fighting for a just, livable future, not killing rooftop solar and supporting environmental racism. So for all of us, this was something we passionately wanted to see the board stay involved with and take action on.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair Hammond, for giving that report and attending our meeting, and thank you for your service in the Community Advisory Committee. I look forward to the conversation and the results of your conversation at your community advisory committee on NEM. And perhaps, Bill, we can include Tara or somebody from community advisory committee on the education of our board, just so that we have as many diverse voices and perspectives as possible, so that we can truly kind of take the right position. And so this is, I think this is one of the first times we're hearing this perspective within our organization. So I definitely want to include that. So
yeah, I'd be happy to. And there were a couple questions earlier that came up that I don't think anyone answered that I knew. So we'd be happy to be a resource. All of the community advisory committee members, we're excited to jump in and help wherever we can. So
Good.
Feel free to let me know. But thank you all. Appreciate what you're doing.
Good. Hold on for 1 second.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Vice Chair Hammond? All right, not seeing any questions. Thank you, Tara, for coming tonight, and thank you for presenting.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. Let's move on to item number 5, market update and direction to staff regarding 2021 rates. We have 2 recommendations under this item: receive market update and direct staff to present revised 2021 rates to the board for adoption on April 22nd, 2021, to be effective with SDCP's phase 2 enrollment on June 1st, 2021. Second recommendation is direct staff to target generation rates that result in at least a 1% discount to the corresponding service from SDG&E and planned reserve margin contribution of at least 5%. I'm gonna hand this off to Bill. Are you taking this item?
Yes,
All right, floor is yours.
okay, thank you. Can we go to the timeline slide, which is like the 3rd slide? Yeah, right there, I'll start there. Just to give you an idea of how this fits in the total scheme of things, we adopted our first rates. You all adopted them back in January of 2021, just a few months ago. And it was based upon our pro forma financial model, which was reviewed. It also had an estimate of SDG&E rates, which were very preliminary. Not that we set rates based on what SDG&E is doing, but we have certain goals, and the goal would be to be less than SDG&E. So we wanted to wait and see how those finally washed out. And so we made a commitment to you all to come back once things got a little clearer, and either adjust them or keep them the same. At least we talk about it. But if we can go to the next slide, there were events happening around us that became more dramatic as time went by. And this is a graph of the last 6 months. And it's only 6 months of energy costs in the market. And you can see the ISO or rolling blackouts that happened back in August and September, which really this is the precursor for the sort of near panic that's taking place regarding this summer, where the commission is saying the IOUs have to boost up the earlier item that we talked about in terms of additional acquisitions, so that we hopefully have belts and suspenders when it comes to not having blackouts this coming season. However, a market is obviously responsive to supply and demand. So if all of a sudden the demand goes up, the prices are going to tend to go up with it. So you can see after the blackouts, the experts, I would have to say, thought that it would come back down to normal. You can see prior to that, it was pretty flat. Then it jumps up and then it comes down about halfway. Let's see if I can you see that arrow? No, okay. And then it starts along about January, starting upward again. And that's when we went into the market to buy some supplies for our portfolio. And those costs came in higher than we had anticipated. And so we, about a month later, went out with a second tranche. That price was also higher. And so I don't know if you can see, it's covered up on mine, but the costs here From July 1, they were $48, I believe it is. Here, I've got it right here. Were $48, and by March of this year, they were 107. So they more than doubled. At a time when we are in the market trying to fill our basket, that's not good news. That has an impact. And so if I can have the next slide, we took a look then, we went back to our pro forma. This is the model that we used to set rates the first time. And you'll see we had anticipated revenues to be 274 million, power supply at 243, which, by the way, power supply is almost 90% of our total costs. So it has a dramatic impact in terms of swinging where we're going or not. And you can see our target at that point was 13.6 million. We call it surplus. It's actually reserves. That, and all businesses need to have that to operate. But now after the surge, power supply costs went up to 272 million, almost 273 million. And the reserves or surpluses were negative 14.8 million, which means we could not operate that way. We have no reserve funds. We're actually in a deficit situation. So we took a look at what our options were, and we wanted to first of all restore our reserves, and our reserve target is about 10%. And we also wanted to make sure we were back in balance. So what we're recommending to you is that we adjust rates along the lines of what was in the previous slide, that we keep our generation rates at 1% below SDG&Es, and that we have a reserve target of 10%. And that's the action that we're asking you to take to get us back to reserve levels that are actually about 15 million, which is our target to begin with. So that's the action that we would request of you today. We'll bring it back, bring the rates themselves back if you approve this action in April, for you to approve the rates in April to be effective July 1 at the beginning of phase 2.
Do we have any questions? I'm sorry, Bill, is that
That's our recommendation.
All right. So do we have any questions or comments on this item? Director Baber, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, Bill, I know the answer to this question because I asked you this in the call, but I wanted you to ask it in public so you could tell the public. Why do you have to feel like you have to make a decision now? Could you wait 30, 60, 90 days and see what the market is then?
Well, we actually intend on going out and buying more. This, our basket is not full yet. And we actually are looking at ways to delay those purchases for the exact reasons you're talking about. Let the market settle out a little bit, but we do need to continue to fill our basket, and we're looking for other ways that we can break it up or modify it in ways that we don't have the ongoing impacts that we have now. I will say one thing though that I neglected to say is that, because we're actually nonprofit, if we were to set the rates too high, let's suppose the market comes crashing back down again, and now we've raised our rates and now we're putting away more reserves than we need to, that would be a great situation to be in. But if that happens, those revenues, those surplus funds stay with SDCP. We don't have shareholders to pay. So the board then could either, I guess, refund or reduce rates or put them in reserves. There's a number of actions that can start programs. There's a number of actions that the board could take because the money would still be there. So we're just trying to be conservative here. And I wish I could tell you that, the market was going to turn around tomorrow. We have some conservancy built here, a few $1 million that if the market tends to go up again, we can do it. We are delaying the actions as you observed to see if we can ride out this peak, and then get back in when it's on the downside. But now with the PUC action, that even puts more pressure on for rates to be higher. So it's a strange market. I don't know if Byron has anything he wants to add, but it's just dramatic that it would double within 6 months. It just, no one would have predicted. So, but no one predicted the blackouts either. So now, it has everybody scared to death. So I wish I had better news, but we're just trying to be conservative here and make sure we're not going overboard.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I think you frame it well, and all good questions and discussion. I'll note that as I mentioned earlier, I think we have done a good amount of hedging already and purchasing of shape products and energy products to really, the name of the game is to lock in cost certainty as well, right? In such a volatile market, we really don't want to be exposed to either the forwards markets or to the daily markets. So that's really what we have been doing. We still, as Bill mentioned, still have a little bit of purchasing to do to clean up some of the short positions here and there. But again, feel pretty good about where we are position wise. And as Bill mentioned, the short positions we have to close out, kind of evaluating strategies at this point about the best way to space those between now and summer, just to make sure that we are again well positioned and to take into consideration how eventful this market has been already, and in a lot of ways, really, I don't want to say it's unprecedented, but it is a quite unusual market at this point.
And I would also say that if the market had not turned dramatically, we would have probably already done tranche 3 and been on our way. So we already have delayed it based upon what we're seeing, and we'll tend to ride through the crest without having to dip our foot in the water anymore if we can.
Director Baber, did that respond? Was that response?
Yes, I had this extensive discussion with Bill, and I thought that was important for the public to hear that, all of the pressures in trying to time the market here.
All right. Any other questions? Any other comments by my fellow board members? Megan, do we have any public comments?
There are no public comments.
All right, and I don't see any hands raised by the attendees. All right, let's take it back to the board. I think this is a prudent and reasonable proposal by staff. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. It makes sense to reset this. And as Bill was saying, if the market gets better and we start to accumulate more reserves, well, those are reserves that we're going to use for programs or rate stabilization or any number of things that we can decide in the future. So I think that there's no downside to doing what we're doing. There's only a downside by not doing it. And so I will move that we adopt the staff's recommendations, and I'll entertain a second.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second by Director LaCava. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion? All right, let's vote.
Chair, just a really quick question. I just wanted to make sure I understood the 1% discount would be both for Power On and Power 100, Bill?
Yes.
And is there a point in time that we actually?
Let me check the staff just to make sure I don't want to leave you astray.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So that can't be correct. So you're saying, so he's asking, let's just make sure we have the question and the answer properly here.
Yeah, I want to make sure also.
All right. So what was your question, Director LaCava?
The question was both the 1% discount to Power On and Power 100.
I believe the answer to that is yes. Anybody agree?
So this is Byron here, and certainly we'll allow others to chime in who are closer to the rate side of things. But so it'll be 1% cheaper on the Power On. The Power 100, the base rate for that is the same rate, and then we add, I think, as we know, a premium to that. So to compare apples to apples, I think we compare that to the incumbent IOU's premium or renewable rate as well. So I think the expectation is to remain cheaper than that as well.
Yeah.
If that clears up.
So just to be clear, because I'm fuzzy on what you just said. So it can't be that the 50% is 1% lower than SDG&E's 30 their generation rate, and then when we move up to 100%, that we're also 1% less. There's a premium on that, and so it's got to be Are we talking apples to apples here?
Chair Moss, I can chime in for.
All right, please do.
So the base product for SDG, their standard rate will be 1% cheaper on our Power On product. For our Power 100, it will be about maybe 2% above them because you add an adder. What Byron is saying is we're cheaper though than if you compare apples to apples. You compare our Power 100 to SDG's Eco Choice product, then we're lower.
Yeah, our 100% rate compared to their 100% rate is actually more than 1% lower.
All right. So
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, I guess I wasn't clear on it. I don't know if Director was. I thought you were saying that 100% was 1% less than their generation, but it's 1%. It's the same in terms of their eco.
If you compare equals to equals, then we have we can make the claim to be lower.
All right, perfect. Got it. Sorry. All right. Anybody else need anything corrected or confusion cleared up?
Sorry.
Sorry about that. All right. Megan, did you want to let's go to vote.
Director LaCava, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, yes.
Director Baber, how do you vote?
Yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
And we will keep you informed of market conditions so that you'll know what's going on there as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bill. All right, let's move to item number 6, which is the approval of support for Senate Bill 612. Recommendation is adopt a support position for Senate Bill 612, Senator Anthony Portantino, the Ratepayer Equality Act.
And I believe that Laura's going to cover this.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, Bill. So I'll go ahead and provide some background. I'm excited to be presenting on a very exciting topic, the power charge and difference adjustment right before dinner. So hang in there with me. As you all know, early procurement of renewable resources by the investor-owned utilities has led to significant above-market costs since renewables prices have declined. And so there's billions of dollars out there in stranded costs. And when a customer transitions from an IOU to a CCA, the customer continues to share cost responsibility along with the bundled customers for those older legacy resources that were purchased before the customer transitioned from the IOU to the CCA. So while all customers, bundled customers and CCA customers have responsibility for those older contracts, right now only IOU customers have the right to access the benefits of those underlying resources. And those include things like renewable energy, greenhouse gas-free energy, and resource adequacy. So SB 612 is called the Ratepayer Equity Act because it would resolve the inequity by enshrining equal access to all of those benefits into statute. Now you might be wondering to yourself, why is there a bill about this? Well, going back to 2017, actually the CPUC acknowledged that there was sort of this problem around CCA customers and CCAs being able to access the benefits. And so the CPUC initiated a proceeding, the PCIA proceeding, and they said that this proposal should be worked out in a working group. And so there was a 9-month-long process, and it was led by Cal CCA, Southern California Edison, and Commercial Energy. They were the co-chairs. Eventually, they came up with a consensus proposal. This proposal was presented to the CPUC last year in February, but since then, nothing's happened. So like with lots of things, they said that there was going to be a decision by the middle of 2020, and they said, oh, COVID, we'll get it out in the 3rd quarter of 2020 and the 4th quarter of 2020. And now they said they'll get it out in the 1st quarter of 2021, but by my count, that is 6 days from now, and they've yet to do anything. And so Cal CCA said, thank you very much. We're going to take this consensus proposal and put all of the major provisions into legislation. And that is how we get to SB 612. So SB 612, it basically just reflects what was in that, what's referred to as the Working Group 3 consensus proposal. And specifically, It would provide IOU, CCA, and direct access customers an equal right to receive legacy resource products that were procured on their behalf in proportion to their load share, as long as we pay the full cost of those products. It would be voluntary, so it would basically just require the IOUs to offer us our proportional share of those older contracts, and we would at that point have the option to take them or not. SB 612 would also require the CPUC to recognize the value of greenhouse gas-free energy, as well as any new products, and assigning cost responsibility for above market legacy resources in the same way that value is recognized for renewable energy and other products. It would also require the IOUs to offer any remaining excess products that are not taken into the wholesale market in an annual solicitation. And finally, it would require each IOU to solicit interest in renegotiating those older contracts, which would hopefully reduce costs. That provision is entirely voluntary, so it would just say that the IOUs had to see if there was interest in renegotiating contracts, but if there wasn't, it's not compulsory. And so those are the provisions of SB 612. It's being sponsored by CalCCA. If you took a look at my staff report, there are a lot of co-authors, I think around 20 at this point, some senators, as well as a lot of assembly members. I mentioned previously our very own Tasha Borner-Horvath of Encinitas is one of the co-authors, which is very exciting. I also included in my staff report the list of the other CCAs that have already, submitted their official support positions, as well as there's a list of cities in there. And I just found out today that LA County has submitted a support letter, which is great. And so based on all of that, I'm recommending that we also adopt a official support position for SB 612. And I'll stop there and see if there's any questions, because I know that was a lot.
That was a lot, but that was really good, Laura. Thank you so much. So how do we, when this passes, and there is excess of legacy energy generation, and we get to kind of have access to that, who sets the fair market value for that energy?
That's a really good question. I know that right now the market price benchmark, it's a process that's done through the CPUC. I'm not sure with the new legislation who would set the value of that. Ty, do you know the answer to that question? No. Okay. I'm not sure that it's entirely clear at this point.
It's delegated to the CPUC to implement this legislation, so I'm sure they'd work it out, and I would imagine they're going to use the same process that they currently use.
All right. Any questions for Laura or for staff on this item? Director Baber?
Laura, I think I fell asleep, and then I woke up on Christmas morning and I found all of these presents under the Christmas tree, and they're all labeled 6112. That's the best thing I've heard from Sacramento in years. So now I keep thinking, oh my God, what could go wrong? Okay. So, because whenever it's this good, something's going wrong. So tell me, what are the challenges ahead of getting this all the way through?
Yeah, so I'm glad that
before
you asked.
Senator Padilla could carry it. That's all I want to know.
Yeah, I'm glad that you asked, because I'll be honest with you, I do have a little bit of concern about the potential for this bill to get past the committee. And so I will share with you that earlier this week, I talked to your city staff at our check-in that happens before the board meeting. And I told them that, about this presentation that I was going to give today. And I sent out, a draft letter of support. So if after the meeting, everyone was on board with supporting it, hopefully your individual cities will send letters of support, because that is honestly what we really need at this point. As of May 1st, there will be 200 cities that are served by CCAs, and right now only 9 of them have sent in letters of support. And so we're really looking for that local government support to get this out of committee. If any of you know Hueso and want to give him a call and say, hey, it'd be really great if you could get this out of your committee, that would be helpful. So yeah, the bill will be heard either on April 12th or on the 26th. We don't know yet, but it will be heard in committee on one of those 2 dates. And so, the thing about this bill is that it's pretty specific to CCAs. And so right now we have CCA supporting, Cal CCA supporting, cities that are served by CCA supporting. And so I've also started doing outreach to the Community Advisory Committee and asking them, the groups that they're all connected with, if they could please support us, because nobody else cares as much as we do. So that's our big challenge, is getting, but yeah, it's your local government connections are going to be crucial to the success of this.
If I can just say quickly, Mr. Chair, I know Hillary of our La Mesa staff is listening. Hillary, if you want to put this on, figure out a way to get this on the La Mesa agenda so we can sign off on it, that would be great. She's not going to say anything, but I just wanted to pass it to her because, you know, Joe, this is a good thing. We should really try hard to get it through.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And Laura, I'm willing to testify up virtually up in Sacramento, whatever we have to do. I mean, I think that this gets back to the point that we were talking about before. You know, there are still a lot of, though there are 200 cities or so out of the 480 cities in the state of California that you know, have CCAs. There's still a lot of folks that need to be educated up in Sacramento about what CCAs are and what they portend for the future. And so it really is about the old kind of fight up there. CCAs are the underdog up in Sacramento. And so it's the, you know, just continuing to build our coalitions, the folks that you know who gave birth to this organization, you know who we are and what we're about and you know what we want to do for the future. And so just like Laura said, we need to kind of build those coalitions. We need to make sure our cities and all of the stakeholders are writing to the assembly member and the senator and all the folks on these committees to get this out of committee and get it onto the floor. You know, and we're willing to do our part, Laura, anything we need to do.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we have 3 co-authors who are in the committee, so, and we need 8 votes, I believe, to get it out of committee. So that'll be a huge focus for us over the coming weeks. The legislature will go into a spring recess and they'll come back and this might be heard right then. And so, you know, we're doing everything we can to make sure that everyone who needs to know about this bill knows about it, and anyone who's willing to support it will support it.
Good. Any questions?
I just looked up the committee. This is the Senate Standing Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Communications. Is that the committee we're talking about, Laura?
Exactly. Yes.
All right. So the only San Diego person on it is Hueso. But there's some other folks on here who have been traditionally good allies in this subject.
Yeah.
From other
And
parts
they've
of the state.
traditionally been lobbied by certain groups. And so,
Yeah.
So it's important that we continue to build our coalition up there as much as possible with all of our different associations as well, so that we have equal footing when we're basically presenting these type of bills. Any other questions or comments on this item? If not, Megan, do we have any public comment?
There's no public comment.
All right.
Mr. Chair Mosca, if I
Yes.
may.
Yes.
Briefly, I just wanted to chime in and I just took, while you all were discussing the matter, I just took a look at the bill, and the prices set for these resources under the allocation and SB 612 under the market price benchmark, which is annually determined by the commission, as a couple of people mentioned, would probably be the case. So I just want to confirm that. So that's something that's verifiable. We can look up every year and so forth.
Great.
Thanks for the
great.
Pardon the interruption.
No, that's really good information.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Vice Chair Padilla.
I was beginning to wonder if my audio was working, but thank you. I appreciate the presentation. You know, obviously they are in recess. The moment I will obviously touch base with Senator Hueso and circle back.
Thank you, Vice Chair Padilla.
Great. Steve, was that a motion as well?
Certainly.
Thank you. Vice Chair Padilla makes a motion to support this. Do we have a second?
Dedina can second.
Director Dedina second on that. So let's vote.
Sorry. Director LaCava, how do you vote?
Yes.
Director Dedina, how do you vote?
Dedina, yes.
Director Baber, how do you vote?
Enthusiastic, yes.
Vice Chair Padilla, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chair Mosca, how do you vote?
Yes.
Motion carries with all directors voting yes.
All right, perfect. So we are at the end of our agenda and we're going to move to director comments. This is an opportunity for any of my fellow directors to speak if they feel like they haven't had enough time to speak. I feel like I've had enough time. We've had so many meetings today. I'm like, dinner. Do you guys have any other comments? All right, not seeing anybody rush to say anything. Do we have any reports by our CEO or our general counsel?
I think you've heard plenty from us, so we're not gonna hold you from dinner.
We haven't heard from our general counsel. He's billing
Yeah.
us by hour, right?
I'm your silent partner tonight.
Thank you, Ryan. All right. All right, so that's it. So we're at the end of our agenda, and so this is the moment we adjourn. So good night, everybody, and see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Chairman.
thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.